Hello, everyone. Welcome to a kind of an impromptu, not too formal, just a quick live stream here. Just wanted to cover a couple things here. I am working on a video that talks about or covers the new firmware for the RØDECaster Pro, which we have right here, which I'm actually quite excited about. The new firmware has some really pretty amazing features that make this a really impressive device here for, obviously for podcasting, but I think in a couple of other situations as well. And we'll come back to that and talk about that just a little bit. What I wanted to cover here is, in a less formal kind of setting, is a couple of new accessories that Rode has also introduced at the same time as releasing the firmware. So let me just kind of run through things. First of all, let me talk about my audio signal chain here tonight. I am not running through the RØDECaster Pro right now. That'll happen in the video that goes up either tomorrow morning or Saturday morning, my time. The reason we're not doing it here is I want to be able to show you a few things on the RØDECaster that you can't do, so at least not when it's recording. So anyway, that's kind of an explanation, just so you're aware. We are not listening to the RØDECaster Pro right now, and I think you'll see why here in just a minute. So let me just show you a couple of things. Probably the accessory that I'm most excited about here is, I believe they call this the DC-1, but basically what it is, it's an adapter that allows you to power the RØDECaster Pro with a USB battery. And this was actually one of my original criticisms when I did the RØDECaster Pro review last, I think it was March or so. Not this last March, but the March before in 2019. And, you know, really you were kind of tied to AC power. And that I saw as a little bit of a kind of a downside, but they've addressed that now. So now you can actually power it. The power cable itself, the adapter, runs $20. So it seems like a pretty fair price to me. It has the connector for the back of the RØDECaster Pro, which is interesting, a locking barrel connector, and then a USB-A connector on the other side. Now, there is a caveat here, or just something you need to know, is that the USB battery that you use, or whatever USB power source you use, is it has to be able to deliver a certain amount of current, and specifically it needs to be able to deliver 2.4 amps. So that's the important thing to keep in mind. So you can't just use any USB battery bank. It's probably going to be one of the larger ones, but nevertheless, I could power this here. And we'll do a test here to see how long this can power the RØDECaster. Of course, it's going to depend on a number of things like, are you using phantom power, how many channels are using phantom power, so on and so forth. But in any case, that's probably the one I'm most excited about, and that for me and my particular workflow kind of is the most interesting one. There are a couple of others too. Let's just run through these really quickly here. One thing it didn't come with is a cable to connect your phone. So they've now introduced an SC9, what they call an SC9. So this is basically just a TRRS to TRRS cable. So you plug one end into the back here, the other end into your phone, and you are good to go as far as bringing that phone in on this channel right here. So there is that. Another thing here is, what are they calling these? XLR ID. Now, this seems like, to some people, probably seems like an eye roll, kind of a gimmicky thing, but this is what it allows you to do. So I can put this on both ends of my cable. You can see, of course, it lines up with the color of this particular channel. So I would plug this one into channel 3. The reason I think this is a valuable thing is one of the things I've seen is that when someone is relatively new at working with audio, when they run into a problem, a lot of times, and I certainly was in this situation too, and sometimes still am, but you kind of freak out. Like it's like, oh my gosh, how do I solve this problem that we're having right now? I'm not getting any audio on channel 3. What do I do? What these allow you to do, from my point of view, is that they make it easier and basically are kind of a reminder. Work your way through your audio signal chain. Figure out which microphone it is. And if you've got these little identifiers, it makes it a lot easier to identify, okay, channel 3 is connected to that microphone over there. Let's make sure that microphone's plugged in. Let's run it up to the back, make sure it's plugged into input number 3. Good to go. Okay. And you just work your way through the signal chain until you figure out what the issue is. And so that's where I think these are a little valuable. So these are just really kind of a plastic ring that fit on the XLR connectors on either side. And you have one that matches each of the colors on the channels here. So with the firmware update, actually I think they did this a couple firmware updates ago where they added the colors to the channels. So there is that. And then one other thing, they're calling this the HJA4, so headphone jack 4, and all this is really is just a 3.5 millimeter to 1/4 inch adapter. So the thing is that I think a lot of people, when they start doing podcasting, if they've probably invested a good bit of money in this and their microphones, and then they also realize, oh gosh, I need headphones as well. And headphones, if you're gonna have 4 people on a podcast, decent set of headphones, you can squeak by with maybe some $35 headphones, but if you really want to invest in some quality headphones, you're probably looking at $70 to $80 to $100. And what this allows you to do, is, of course, is just use whatever consumer headphones you already have on hand. So just makes it easier to adapt from, even earbuds that you have for your phone. You can use these, and then you can plug in here and have your 4 guests all listening. Now, is it really all that important to have your guests or even their hosts with headphones? And my contention is yes, it is important. And the reason it's important is especially for people who don't have a lot of experience working with microphones or talking into microphones, they need to be able to hear so that they know when they're getting off axis and when they're not talking into the microphone anymore. So I think it's really especially important for those folks to really understand what's going on and help them kind of give them a tool to help make sure that they're getting the best audio possible for the podcast. So, all right. If you have any questions, go ahead and pop those in the chat over here. I've got that pulled up. We're actually tonight, for satisfying curiosity, we're working with the Earthworks SR314. That's a microphone I'm using here. And this is actually going into my Universal Audio Apollo, and then that's being fed into the Canon C200, which is coming into the ATEM Mini Pro. So we are sending the audio through that route, just so you're aware. Now, interestingly, Blackmagic Design just released a new firmware update yesterday, and the ATEM Mini Pro now has the ability to apply an audio delay. And the reason that's important is that if you're live streaming and you're going to connect your microphones, maybe through a mixer or something, directly into the ATEM Mini Pro, the audio will always arrive first at the ATEM Mini before the video will, if you're coming out of HDMI, which ATEM Mini Pro only has HDMI inputs. So what that delay allows you to do is apply up to 8 frames delay so that you can get the audio synced back up with your video and then stream that out. And today, we're actually streaming directly from the ATEM Mini Pro. We're not going through any sort of application on my computer. So all my computer is doing is I've got the ATEM control software running there, just so that I could put up, these kind of images like that. But I'm not going through any sort of app on my computer like I normally do, like Ecamm Live or OBS or any of those. So just so that you are aware. All right, so that's some of the good news. Coming out of Rode. Now, the video that I'm working on that should go up tomorrow morning or possibly Saturday morning, depending on how the edit goes, is going to talk through how to set up the compressor on the RØDECaster. And they've done a really nice job. I'm actually really impressed with what they've done here. And in fact, let me just, I'm not going to run through the whole thing right now, but now you can see, for example, here with the compressor, I have all of the standard types of controls or parameters, if you will, that a compressor would typically have: threshold, ratio, attack, release, and makeup gain. And this makes it so you can really tune in your audio. Now, what I have yet to figure out and still working on is how to feed audio from the RØDECaster Pro into my camera or into the ATEM Mini Pro and get a good signal that way. So the challenge I've had is with my camera, I used the monitor outs, but they didn't appear to be delivering line level signal. It wasn't quite as strong. And so I'm going to need to adjust things a little bit more on my camera to make that work. So we'll be testing that as well here in the next little bit if you're interested in that. So, all right, let's go to the chat here and see what we've got as far as questions. Random geocacher, I'm gonna have to read them to you tonight. I don't have everything set up to show the comments on screen, but let me just read a couple things here. Random geocacher, color markers on cables are great. I bought XLRs in different colors for the same reason. It makes everything a little bit easier when dealing with many cables and mics, and I completely agree. If you're running into those situations where trying to solve a problem again, it's really good to be able to quickly identify. And even if you're not trying to solve a problem, just getting set up and kind of staying sane and understanding exactly where everything's going is good. Felipe Ortiz. Curtis, do you have any recommendations regarding boom arms and shock mounts for heavy mics like the RØDECaster? I just got one. Works great with the Audient ID 14. Best wishes from Chile. Felipe, I guess it depends on your budget. I have for the longest time used the Heil boom arm. I assume you're talking about boom arms like this. And for the longest time I used the Heil. The Heil is okay. It does come, there are two basic types that I see now. They're of the boom arms that you attach to the side of a desk or you drill a hole through the desk. There is the type that generally comes up higher. And this is actually one that's typically designed for that purpose. It actually is pretty tall. Don't know if I can show the whole thing here, but you can see it could come well up above. So the Heil was decent. As I recall, it runs somewhere around $100 US. The little knob that was used to kind of stabilize this little arm here that connects to the microphone clip sometimes was a little fussy. So I'd have to really, really tighten it down to get it to stay where I wanted it to be. So I actually upgraded. Now, this is a ridiculously expensive arm. So this is really a broadcast arm made for radio stations and bigger budget productions. So this one would cost somewhere around $500 or $600. This is by a company called Yellowtech, which is a German company, and it's the part of their Mika line. Yellowtech is spelled YELLOWTEC, and Mika is spelled M!Ka. So that's one type. Another type that I've seen more recently is made more for live streaming. And I actually have one on order from a company called OC White, which also makes high-end boom arms. And that one actually, it kind of runs lower along the desk. I don't know if I can't really show it here, but it runs lower along the desk and then it has an arm that comes up. So it's really made for doing this type of setup a little bit better. And those are not cheap either. Those are in the $400 to $500 range as well. But the Heil boom arm was pretty decent. I haven't ever used the Rode. Rode also has one. I haven't used that one, so I don't know much about that. But that seems it's in the same price range, I think, as the Heil. And it looks like it's pretty decent as well, although, again, I've never used that one. Some of them also have kind of these arms that allow you to mount them up higher. So you could even use them for a boom mic to boom a mic from above. So that's something to look for as well. But the one I do have experience with is the Heil. And I would say it's okay. It's decent quality. It's nice that it has a channel where you can hide the cable. So that is nice. All right. Rob, thank you for the super chat here. I really appreciate that. All right. Tyrant? Can you tell Rode to release a Linux support? Because if they do, a lot of us in the Linux community will buy this gear. Okay, well, there you go. Hopefully Rode will be able to see this. So, okay, good. So Felipe comes back. By the way, I'm asking about the accessories since because of COVID, the official Rode accessories for the Procaster are out of stock here in Chile. Okay. Yeah, so hopefully that information about the Heil arm, I don't know if that's available in Chile. Hopefully it is, but that is the one I do have. All right, NM says, indeed the best late night show this week. Thanks for coming by. GC Hustle Hawaii just updated my RØDECaster Pro. Good, I hope you find the new firmware really, really useful. I'm just wowed that they've come a long way because really when the RØDECaster Pro first came out, it was a good piece of hardware. The effects were something I didn't really use a whole lot, and the reason for that is they were just you couldn't adjust the settings much. And as someone who probably has a fair bit of OCD, that bugged me because, for example, the compressor just was too hardcore. It just didn't sound great. So now you can really fine tune it and really get a much more natural sound, and also get your audio levels where you'd like them, kind of even out those peaks, and then be able to bring the entire level up to a nice level. So really a nice step forward. Okay. GAIPS Gapes says best practice for live stream is to have your audio go through the camera's HDMI. ATEM Mini has audio effects such as a limiter, amongst many others. And I agree. That's how we're running here tonight, is running the audio out of my interface here into the camera and then out the HDMI into the ATEM Mini Pro. So William Shakespeare says, remember to give our boy the Rogans up. Okay. Curtis, do you have any experiences from Kaloyan Benev? Curtis, do you have any experience in more budget-oriented similar options? How does this device compare to the Tascam Mini Studio US42, which is half the price? I don't have experience with the Tascam in particular, but I did look at the Zoom live stream or live track L8. And it has some benefits and some downsides. It doesn't have a compressor, as I recall, which from my point of view for live streaming is really important. Not quite as critical for podcasting if you're going to do a post-processing run through your audio and kind of clean it up and optimize it. But in terms of its overall sound, and its sound was pretty good. The build quality wasn't quite as good as the Rode, so you're very much in a situation where you're getting what you pay for. But there's that. There's also another one that is coming, that's on its way, made by a company called Maono, I think is how you say it. But it's a 2-channel. It looks like they basically ripped off the RØDECaster and added some kind of more, some additional effects for voice processing. We'll see. It's on its way. I'll review it. I think it runs less than $200 US. So we'll see how that comes out. All right. Alex Miner says, you'll need a signal attenuator cable if you're going to a camera. Yes, that is true if you're going to a consumer-oriented camera with a mic level only input. Coming out of most of the mixers, or if you have one of the recorders that you're using as a mixer, for example, a Zoom F4, a Zoom F8N, F8, a MixPre, those actually have the ability to adjust the output fader, and so you can basically get to a microphone level input on those without using an attenuator cable. So that is one thing to consider as well. All right, Fierce Sound. Hi, Curtis. Well, welcome, Fierce Sound. It's good to have you here. For those that aren't aware, Fierce Sound has a YouTube channel where he covers some audio gear as well, and he's got some good info out there. So I've seen, I think you have one on lavaliers that's in my to-watch queue. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm going to get back to that. All right, anyone know if the RØDECaster Pro is still out of stock? I don't know the answer to that myself. Sharp Dunaway says, I'm using my RØDECaster and my Sling Studio to live stream. Works great. That is good news. Bill Dawson is asking what my streaming bitrate is. Right now, I'm just using this is just a 6 megabit stream that we're doing right now. So I don't know how it looks on your end. Hopefully it's okay. But that's where we're at right now. All right, Rob talks about the RØDECaster on Kickstarter right now. That's the one I was referring to earlier. I believe it's going to be just under $200 US. It's 2 channels. Otherwise, it looks very similar to the RØDECaster. We'll see how it holds up. My expectations are not super high, but they're sending one over my way. They contacted me the first time. I was like, no, I don't know. I don't have time. I've got a lot of other things I'm focused on at the moment. They wrote me back a couple days ago and said, hey, people are writing on our Kickstarter that they want you to review it. So I said, okay, send one over. We'll take a look at it. Ricardo Ruiz. I've learned so much from Curtis. It's not even fair. Thanks for the hard work. Thank you, Ricardo. I appreciate that. Portala Hangaro Canal de Avia. My Portuguese is not so good, but Curtis and Ricardo and I accompany you here from Brazil. What is the best Rode microphone to use in my live streams? Greetings. The best Rode microphone. I have not used all the Rode microphones. I do own a number of them. I am actually very fond of the Rode NT1. It's about a $270 US microphone. As far as large diaphragm condensers in that price range, it is, from my point of view, a fantastic microphone. I really, really like that one. So that's probably one of my favorites. I I've used most of their shotgun microphones. I'm not so, you could use those for live streaming, but I would probably opt for, I guess it depends on what you want to do. If you want it out of the frame, then probably one of the shotgun mics would be a better choice. But however, what I will say is that you're going to need to do everything you can to manage reflections and things of that nature. Now, the nice thing about a shotgun microphone is that it has a fairly focused polar pattern, but you'll want to get it in as close as you can. Boom it just barely out of the frame. Just bring it into the frame and just pull it right barely back out like that. And that's going to be your best bet on that front. So there are some thoughts there for you. Hopefully that helps there. Thanks for joining from Brazil. All right, let's see here. Let's catch up on the chat here. Yes, Bangs Naughty Bits says that on the Heil boom arm there is a channel to hide the cable, and I agree that is a very nice feature. All right, and the model appears to be the PL2T. Thank you for that, Bangs. I appreciate that. How do you recommend recording or syncing your video with the RØDECaster? That's from Lamont Solomon. I'm not sure the context of that question, but if you're talking about live streaming, well, here you're talking about recording. And are you talking about the RØDECaster Pro, or are you talking about the microphone called the ProCaster? Is it called the ProCaster? I'm not even sure. I haven't used that microphone. I don't own it. Anyway, so there, I guess the question or the answer to that really, I guess it kind of depends on. I guess I need more info, Lamont. It's probably a good question. I just need to understand a little bit better. If you wouldn't mind kind of clarifying that. All right, Bangs Naughty Bits brings up another interesting point, that one of the things that the RØDECaster can do is it can record to RF64 format, which means that if you're doing a really long podcast and you have multiple channels, what this allows you to do now is record files that are larger in size, that don't get chopped up into multiple pieces. So that makes it a lot easier in post. You just bring in a single file. So that was a limitation, as I understand, of the FAT file system, FAT32. Don't know all the details on it, but it does allow you to record longer in a single file, which is a nice feature as well. All right, Rob has a recommendation for a future episode. Maono has a budget RØDECaster on Kickstarter right now, the RØDECaster, less than $150 US. I think that's the Kickstarter price. I think once it goes into production, it's $179, something like that. 2 mic inputs, no mix minus still. And yes, you bet, Rob, that's on its way. So we will definitely be reviewing that for us. Do you ever do, this is from Shelly, do you ever do an instructional type video so that those of us, probably only me, that have no clue the names and models of pieces of equipment you talk about and what they do? Novice shame. There is no shame in being a novice, Shelly. So thanks for the question. I do try to keep, so this one's going to be, yeah, I think that's a fair question. I do try to keep it fairly straightforward and make the reviews accessible to someone who is not an audio engineer. But the problem I do have, I will confess to this, is that I've had my head in this audio stuff for a while now, and so sometimes I forget what it's like to be at the same stage that you're at. So I may need a little bit of help, and I want to strive for that. So always ask questions. I always appreciate questions, and so keep that up. And hopefully we can get you the information that you need. All right. Porta, I'll call you Porta for now. But I really like the quality of your camera and light. The live is very comfortable to watch. The sound is also very good. What camera is used? So this is an expensive camera, I will confess. Prior to earlier this year, I was using a Panasonic GH5. Now I'm using a Canon C200, not 500. I wish I had a 500, but I don't. I want to give a little background information. You clearly do not need that type of camera for live streaming. The reason I actually bought that camera was for my corporate video work, but in light of the pandemic, I haven't been doing corporate video work, so it's turned into a live stream camera for me for now. So you certainly don't need something like that to do live streaming. Even the most basic cameras with a relatively large sensor Sony A6000 series, any one of those cameras, can do a really pretty nice job as far as live streaming is concerned. So I appreciate the feedback. Bangs Naughty Bits, EPOS Fox likes the Go XLR and Go XLR Mini as a 1 or 2 person live stream box. I have, everything I've seen on the Go XLR looks really good and sounds really good. So it's got some nice built-in processing, which also works very nicely. So definitely some good quality there. Love to get my hands on one of those someday. All right, Random Geocacher says, regarding boom arms, there's a DSLR video shooter video on DIY modding VESA monitor arms to boom camera and mics. Some work required though. Good, thanks for the reference there. That's really helpful. So appreciate that, Random Geocacher. All right, from Pramanik, Astrology Channel. Love your channel. Thanks for the super chat, by the way. Love your channel. You are an inspiration to us, praying for your highest good and greatest growth. Thank you so much, and best wishes to you as well. All right. Let me just see here. What else have we got? Good, healthy discussion coming in. A couple other super chats. Thanks to Brandon. Just wanted more than just say, hey, your channel's been one of the go-to sources for audio information, another highly recommended by others. Thanks so much for the support there, Brandon. And Han saying, thank you, Curtis. No problem. Just wanted to say thank you for your channel and learning a ton on your paid courses for Audition and Fairlight. So thanks for that as well. All right, Rob, going back up a little bit. Kevin Yeo asks, do you know what the USB Mix Minus does on the RØDECaster Pro? Yes. What the Mix Minus does is that, for example, if you have someone that's coming in via your phone, say, for example, you have Skype on your phone, or actually even just a phone call on your phone, one of the challenges is that when they talk into their phone, and that's coming to you, to your phone, and then into the RØDECaster, the person that's on the phone needs to be able to hear you and all of your guests that are local here on the same side as the RØDECaster. But what happens is as they're talking, if you didn't have a Mix Minus, what would happen is they would also hear their own voice. And the problem in that case is that there's some latency involved. So when you're making a phone call, the audio comes in over the phone call, then it comes in the RØDECaster, and then it goes back out. And it goes back to the person calling if you did not have a Mix Minus. So all a Mix Minus does is it prevents their audio, the remote caller's audio, from going back out to them and creating this like half-second to 1 second delay that becomes really, really annoying for them to listen to. So that's what a Mix Minus does. It makes it a much more comfortable experience for your remote guests. So good question. Glad you asked that. All right. And just for the record, yes, Alex Miner here pointed out that the RØDECaster that we're talking about, the kind of low-cost ripoff of the RØDECaster, it does not have Mix Minus, so that is a downside. So if Mix Minus is important to you, it doesn't have it. However, what I would say is that if you're using a lot of the online kind of calls, the voice over IP calling services, basically have what they call, for example, Skype has this echo cancellation, which basically serves the same purpose. And what I found is that it automatically kicks in, and so it takes care of that for you. So if you're using something like that, it's not necessarily a big deal. But if you are trying to bring in a phone call, just like a regular old mobile phone call, that's where you're going to have a potential problem. So that is one thing that the RØDECaster does not have. So thanks for that, Alex, for pointing that out. Appreciate that. Let's see. Fierce Sound says Rode and Deity are the best bang for your buck when it comes to location sound gear. I think you're right. There are some really great things from both companies. I would say that probably one of my favorite shotgun microphones in the last year was the Rode NTG5. They really did a nice job with that. And to get an RF bias microphone for $500 with a shock mount, pretty impressive deal. That's a nice microphone that you're getting there. All right. Bangs Naughty Bits also mentions that if you are typing in a live stream, a dynamic mic will shave 5 dB off the level of the ambient sound, which is a good point as well. And so I have up until recently very much been focused on or using dynamic microphones for live streams. This is one that I found more recently that is a condenser. I don't do a ton of typing during the live stream itself, so I'm not a gamer. I'm not doing gaming live streaming. However, it is a little bit of a pain I've noticed when I am using this mouse. I'm a mouse guy, and I have this kind of customized mouse that fits my enormous hands, and it makes a fair bit of noise. Here's a little test here for you. I think you can probably hear that. So yeah, I think there are some definite advantages to dynamic microphones during a live stream. Okay. Coach and Angelin, I apologize, I'm probably hacking that to pieces, but he says, or she says, I'm not sure if that's a he or she. I'm going to guess a he, not sure. RØDECaster Pro works great with Zoom on my MacBook Pro. And yes, agreed. That is a good combination. All right. Felipe asks, regarding live stream setups, I've been experimenting with Zoom for my live music history lessons. I'm using a Sony a7 III, a PC, and a MacBook connected to the ATEM Mini. That's a pretty nice setup there. And I found these ATEM Minis are pretty awesome. They do a good job. Okay, JB asked, why do you use the RØDECaster over the MixPre 3 or the MixPre 6 for podcasting? Well, the truth is that I do a little bit of podcasting, not a ton. And for me, I'm more of an educator, so that's why I have it. I think the RØDECaster Pro, I generally actually will use a MixPre, especially if I'm doing a multi-person podcast, because I'm typically not live streaming it, first of all. Second of all, the advantage that the MixPre gives me, if you've added the Mix Assist plugin, is an automatic mix. And that makes a huge difference if you're going to have multiple people, each with their own microphone. You get a much cleaner recording directly out of the recorder on something like that. And then I will do the compression and all that type of stuff in post if I need to. But the nice thing about that is that I can basically do some very, very little post-processing and be ready to publish that if I'm using that Mix Assist. Now, the advantage of the RØDECaster is, it's very simple for those that are not audio engineers. So you've got this very basic mode if you want to just keep it super simple. And they're not, anyone that's not used to using a mixing board or anything like that, they've done a good job keeping this pretty simple. But they've also opened things up now that you can get more advanced. So over time, as you start to learn more, maybe encounter some issues with your recordings, you can fine-tune this and really get a better overall audio recording. So there's some advantages there. The nice thing about the Rode 2, from my point of view, is that it's nice that it has that built-in compressor, so that does potentially make it a better thing for live streaming. And I used to actually live stream with my MixPre, but I actually have moved over to using my audio interface that does have some processing built into it, or using something like a DBX286S. And the nice thing about that is it allows you to get your levels up nice and high, so that anyone that's listening on a mobile device, for example, is going to have a better experience. They're not going to have to crank their volume quite as much, especially if they're in a noisy location when they're listening to you. So those are some thoughts on why I use that. So I think there's some pluses and minuses on each side. The RØDECaster does have expander or noise gate, and that it's not exactly the same as Mix Assist or an auto mix type thing, but it does help with the overall recording as well. So it's kind of a different approach to solving a similar problem. But Mix Assist is really easy to use. You basically turn it on and you're ready to go. So that's the nice thing about the MixPre Mix Assist. So it's kind of pluses and minuses. And if I am going to do a multi-person podcast, I'll almost always choose my MixPre with Mix Assist on it. If I am going to recommend something to somebody that needs a simple solution, I'd probably give them the RØDECaster Pro. Okay. Yervant Tech, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. There are a couple more questions here I want to address. The business firm says, "G'day, mate. Thanks for putting this stream on. Love your content. What is your opinion of using the NT1 versus the Rode NTG2 as a boom mic for dialogue?" Well, the NTG2 has a more focused polar pattern, but it requires a really good preamplifier behind it to get a good recording, is my impression. And that was my very first shotgun microphone. The NT1 I like the sound of the NT1 better, significantly better, but it's not really well suited to be a boom microphone. First of all, it's kind of large and it's kind of heavy. And it also doesn't have a polar pattern that's quite as focused. So it's kind of a trade-off there between those two. I would probably not use the NT1 as a boom, to be entirely honest. But it's worth a try. What I would recommend, if you've already got both of those mics, do a test. Set them both up and see what happens and which one sounds better. Use your ears and trust your ears, because your ears don't lie. So definitely get used to kind of trusting your ears and doing those experiments to see how things work. So thanks for that question, Business Firm. Ricardo says, as a streamer, how can I separate the audio sources? My stream consists of one Xbox connected to an Elgato 4K Pro, only one computer, all audio managed at the RØDECaster Pro with a version 2.1 beta firmware. How can I separate the audio sources? I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that, Ricardo. Are you trying to... so you obviously have some game... I'm guessing you have some game audio coming from the Xbox. The Xbox is going into the Elgato. And then I assume you're using the RØDECaster connected to the computer via USB. And I assume you're trying to bring it all together? I'm not sure. So OBS would, OBS or some equivalent encoding app would be I would think the obvious answer, but I'm not sure. I think I'm missing something in your question there. Bang's Naughty Bits, really long on the RØDECaster is 35 minutes since it can only record in stereo or 14 tracks, no arming or disarming. That is one thing I've noticed, actually, and I'm glad you brought that up. I just noticed that the other day, is that you can't turn off the channels you're not using, and so when you import that into, say, for example, Adobe Audition or some other digital audio workstation app, audio editing app, it has all those extra channels there with nothing on them, which is a little weird. It seems like you should be able to disarm them, but there's no way to do that currently. So that seems like a software change that could be made. So Rode, if you're listening to that, would love to be able to disarm channels that we're not using. So good point, Bangs. All right, Felipe says, at first I was unable to use my audio interface or an XLR mics with the ATEM on my PC, so I was using the old Rode Video Mic Pro connected to the camera. And that could be a valid approach, but so now you have another option there. If you've got an output, line output on that audio interface, you can feed that now directly into the ATEM Mini, so you've got a new option there. So that's exciting news. All right. Ricardo Rivera. Hi, Curtis. Have you used any other audio software besides Audition? I hear Pro Tools is better, but I'm unsure if it is worth spending more money to use that when I'm already subscribed to Adobe Creative Cloud. Oh, boy. I would say this. Pro Tools is the tool of choice that's been used in the film industry as far as film post audio is concerned for a couple of decades now. And it is still the standard when you're working on larger budget films and television projects. It's fairly capable. It's kind of funny because I do have Pro Tools as well. Yes. So your question, I have Logic, I have Pro Tools, I have Adobe Audition, I've used Reaper in the past. So those are the main digital audio workstations that I have. But as of right now, Logic, Pro Tools, and Audition is what I have. Also Fairlight within DaVinci Resolve, of course. So yes, I've used all of those. It depends on what you're doing. So once you start getting into bigger projects, I have found Adobe Audition, when you start getting into 30 and 40 tracks in your film mixing projects, so for example, for short films or feature-length films, that's when Audition starts to struggle. And I have a computer that can handle everything. It has all the resources. It's a 10-core CPU, plenty of RAM. It's an iMac Pro, but it just crashes, just disappears sometimes, Audition. That's where I think Pro Tools generally is going to work a little better. But then there are other people, and even in the Pro market, I've seen some people really complain about stability issues from time to time with Pro Tools. So in any case, I would say that Pro Tools is probably much more common when you get into the larger budget projects. I think Audition is going to work fine for most independent type of projects as far as mixing is concerned. So I'm okay with Audition. I think that when you start getting a lot of tracks, so once you start getting past 10, 12, 15 tracks, that's when I've seen, at least on my computer, things to start they get less stable and a little bit concerning from that standpoint. All right, Daniel Chow asks, can Sound Devices MixPre 3 and Zoom F8 work together? There's no way to, I mean, you could use one to do a premix and then feed that audio into another one. That could certainly work, but there's no sort of like connecting them via USB, if that's what you mean, to each other. There's nothing on that front. You could use in Mac OS, and I believe on Windows as well. I'm not as familiar with Windows, but on Mac OS, you can actually combine them into a, what is the term called? You basically combine them into a single audio interface as far as the operating system is concerned. So you can do that. I haven't done a lot of work with that. You're going to have to be kind of careful with that, because if you, the latency is going to be different on the two of them. So it's going to have to do some work to kind of sync those up. So keep that in mind. There's some potential issues there, but yeah, I think, you can certainly use one to feed a mix to the other. So for example, you could do a pre-mix on the MixPre. That is to say, bring in, say if you're using the MixPre 3, you could bring in 3 microphones, mix those, and then send the output from the MixPre into an input on the Zoom F8, and that would work fine. Felipe asks, but yesterday I connected my Audient to the Mac and it worked, even using Logic Pro 10 to process sound. I'm monitoring using the 3.5mm audio from a 5-inch monitor connected to a Theo headphone amp. I think I missed the context on that one. I apologize on that. All right. Connectin, can you do a video of using the Shure SM7B with the RØDECaster Pro in combination with the ATEM Mini Pro? Yes, I would love to get more details on what part of that you're struggling with. I think the biggest thing for me is getting the audio out of the RØDECaster into the ATEM. I still need to do a little bit more experimenting with that. Some people have had some issues with that, so I need to get in there and try it out myself a little bit more and see what we come up with. But yes, I am working on that, working that direction. Yervant Tech, I have both the RØDECaster and the ATEM Mini Pro. Would you connect the RØDECaster to the computer or ATEM Mini Pro? Ideally, I would connect it to my camera. But now that we have the offset feature, I'm going to, as I said before, I'm going to go ahead and see what it takes to get them working well together and assess how well they work together. So stand by for that. All right. Alberto says, love the channel. Thank you so much, Alberto. Fierce Sound points out, we talked about the Go XLR a little bit earlier, and he says, the problem with the Go XLR is it only works with their app. That's good to know. And yeah, that's definitely a potential limitation, potentially big time there. All right. Alberto, how do you sync your audio so good? I connect it directly to my camera. So again, the audio signal chain tonight is my microphone into my audio interface, line out from that into my camera, HDMI to the ATEM Mini Pro, and that's what you're seeing here. So that's how we sync it up perfectly here. Now, with the ATEM Mini Pro, if I sent my audio from my audio interface into the ATEM Mini Pro, I could use the audio offset there to get them synced up. So that would work just as well. All right. Dan Eichmeyer, what's your opinion on the Samson MBA38 microphone boom arm? I've got one on the way. Will it hold a Heil PR40 okay? Oof. I'm sorry, Dan, I haven't used that boom arm, so I'm not sure. If anyone else has used the Samson boom arm, if you could help our friend Dan out, that would be fantastic. Let's see, Crimson Filter. Will the Mix Minus work for doing live streaming with guests? The answer is yes. It will work for doing live streaming with guests. So that's good news. Rob asks, I've cleared my tech issues from my movie review live stream. Thanks to you and Jem Schofield, I'm going to be converting the audio to podcast episodes. Any tips? Any tips? Nothing comes screaming to mind. This is one of those that you're going to dive in and you're going to figure out some new things. You're probably going to run into some problems. That's how these things go. We're all learning. No, just make sure you press record and make sure your audio is sounding good. But it typically does when I've checked into your live streams. So I think you're headed the right direction. So best of wishes to you, Rob. I think you are being very careful, and I think you're going to be just fine. And again, as I've said, since I've been on your live streams, be careful you don't clip. Just take extra special care to make sure you don't clip. Let's see here. Next from AP3ISME, I'm going late. Sorry if you covered this already, but I guess that you joined late. But I recently got the RØDECaster. This weekend I'm doing a remote interview. How do you enable Mix Minus? Let's show you here. If you come into the menu, and I believe if you go, is it chat? No, it's advanced, I think. Audio, multi-track. Nope. You're going to have to forgive me. This is all changed since, there it is. USB Mix Minus. So if you're going to have someone come in, the Mix Minus automatically works if you plug into, if you use the USB or the mobile port. But if you're going to do the call on your computer and you're connected via USB, you'll want to turn on this USB Mix Minus here. Okay, so just to review, these automatically Mix Minus, these two right here. If you're connected via USB and you're using, say, for example, Skype or whatever on your computer, you'll want to enable this USB Mix Minus. And that's under, again, we'll get there really quickly. If I go to the menu, Advanced Audio Processing USB Mix Minus. All right, so thanks for that question there. Alberto Garcia, he asked which mic I'm using. This is an Earthworks SR314. We reviewed this last week. If you're interested in the full details, it is a condenser microphone, and it's a pretty unique looking microphone. Hopefully it sounds good. Hopefully you're enjoying the sound, that it's not hurting your ears. Matt Stan asks, Curtis, what recommendations do you have for bringing a remote guest via Skype, etc., during a live stream with the ATEM Mini Pro? It actually is a pretty straightforward process. If you go into the preferences for Skype, you'll get everything set up. You'll choose your, you have to consider where your audio is coming from. So obviously, I think you'll generally choose the Blackmagic. I think it comes in as a Blackmagic ATEM or something like that. Choose that for your camera source. And then if you're sending audio in through, you'll just have to have your ATEM set up correctly for where the audio is coming from. So in that case, and then you'll also choose your audio. You'll choose your speakers and you'll choose your microphone. So you'll have to, wherever those are coming from. So for example, if your audio is coming in through the ATEM, then you'll choose that as your microphone. For playback, you'll probably have something else like an audio interface, or you'll be connected to your built-in headphone jack on your computer. So you choose whichever one of those you're using. That's basically it. So the nice thing about Skype is it does have that echo cancellation. So even if you're not doing a Mix Minus, everything should be fine there. So that's really all you need to know, Matt. So good luck on your live stream there. All right. Brendan Barnes asks, hi Curtis, what are your thoughts on the Rode NTG5 for voiceover work? I currently use the NTG3 and am more than happy with it. Is there much difference between the two? Yeah, in my tests, the NTG5 has a more natural sound. So the NTG3 has this kind of bass boost to it, which is a sort of a broadcast sound. And a lot of people love that. And if it's working well for your voice, I would probably just stick with it. The NTG5 tends to sound it doesn't have quite as much of that bass. It's still sounds rich and nice on the low end, but it's not quite as, it doesn't color your voice as much. It captures more of your natural voice. So if you're getting good results with your NTG3, probably stick with that. All right. Here we have a question from Yogi Sound. Hello, Curtis. I am Korean living in Calgary, Canada. In my opinion, you are the best video sound equipment YouTuber. My question is, have you tried Korean food? Yes. I have tried some Korean food. I've had Korean barbecue. Now, the reality is that here in the United States, the Korean food is probably not like it actually is in Korea. That's generally the case for most food that I've tried. And I haven't tried a lot of it, but the Korean barbecue I've had was absolutely delicious. The guy I used to work for, his wife is Korean, and I went to their house for dinner once, and some good stuff. Definitely some good stuff. The kimchi was good. I didn't think I would like it, but I did like it. So, Hanseng Bei, when you started your YouTube channel, did you think you'd be this popular? Also, well, no. When I started my YouTube channel, I was just nerding out with microphones, and I had no aspirations of any sort other than to provide information for other people. And still, really, that's my main goal. But he said, you go on here. Also, you should have a live stream of all the mistakes you learned from over your career, a School of Hard Knocks edition. Yeah, I would say that the things where I've bumped my chin or stubbed my toe the most, made mistakes, is live streaming. Live streaming is hard, and there are a lot of mistakes that could be made. So, all right, thanks from ConnectIn for the super chat, first of all. And then, would you be able to show RØDECaster Pro settings for the SM7B in combination with the ATEM Mini Pro? Yes, I will. I'll put that on my list, and we will get something going for you on that. Now, that's going to be a little challenging, I will confess, because the SM7B, I don't know if you're using like a cloud lifter or a FET head. That might make things a little bit easier. I believe this tops out at, I can't remember how much gain the RØDECaster Pro supplies. I think it's up to 58 or somewhere in that range, maybe 60 dB of gain. But that's one consideration. So it's generally enough. So it's kind of right on the edge, but if it makes it even easier. But in any case, yes, to answer your question, I will work on that. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and leave a note for myself right now. We're going to put that in the list here. Let's go ahead and make a new note, and RØDECaster, ATEM Mini, and SM7B. All right, it's in the list. Thank you for the request. All right, Matthew DeLeon. For narrative projects, should I invest more in acoustic treatment, like mounting sound blankets on stands, or a better microphone, upgrading from the Rode VideoMic Go to something like the Deity S Mic 2? Matthew, that is a great question. I think I would probably get the microphone first in that case, and then immediately after that, as soon as you can, get the sound blankets. The problem with the Rode VideoMic Go, from my experience, is that it's hard to boom and get it close enough. And so here are the things. Number one, priority is get your microphone close. Number two priority is either choose a good recording space that doesn't have a lot of acoustical problems, a lot of reverberation or things like that, or a lot of noise. And if you can't choose a different place, then treat the space as best you can. That's where sound blankets come in. So those would be my priorities. So probably from the VideoMic Go, that's just going to be a tricky one to boom, unless you've got something worked out. But I would probably go with the Deity S Mic 2, and then immediately after that, save up for the sound blankets. All right. Lyle says, Curtis, the RØDECaster Pro has really helped me continue producing the We Are Netflix podcast during COVID. Thanks for the recommendation. I'm glad to hear, Lyle, that it's working out well for you, so thanks for that. All right, we have a conversation going on between Fierce Sound and Rob about the Go XLR. I'll leave you guys up to watch that. JB, or Jab, I apologize. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for your very thorough answer. I canceled my order on a RØDECaster Pro in favor of the MixPre 6. 2, I tweeted you hoping to interview you. Well, if you've tweeted me, then I will look it up and I'll get in touch with you. So thanks for that. Okay. Back here, what other questions do we have? Hillary Clinton has a question. Airplane, building, did you do this? I'm gonna assume that's not really Hillary Clinton, and that's not really her question for me. Tick Academy, nice stream, just found it. I do the same on Wednesday, but for networking. Cool. Well, thanks for coming by, Tick Academy. Jesus Sanchez, is it worth it to use to get the ATEM Mini as a multicam capture solution? That's a good question, Jesus. I actually use it sometimes in my pre-recorded episodes as well because it allows me to do the switching on the fly. So that means less B-roll for me to shoot. And so it does have some limitations. If you record from the HDMI output to an external recorder like an Atomos, very good quality. If you record on the ATEM Mini Pro, it has the ability to record itself. The video seems pretty good, probably not as high bit rate and not as high quality codec as you can get on an Atomos recorder. And it does cut off some of the higher frequencies from the sound, not generally stuff that you're going to hear with dialogue anyway. But I really do like the switching feature. So even with the ATEM Mini, if you have an external recorder, for me, it works really well in terms of multicam where I can be much more efficient and not have to shoot the main storyline and then go back and reshoot all of the B-roll. So it definitely saves some time. All right. Derinden Technology, I have a question for you. I'm now using M-Audio Basic Sound Interface competing with Focusrite. I have a Rode NTG4 Plus, NT1A for different situations. Should I buy a Tascam DR60D to get most out of it? No, if your interface is working, I would stick with that. I don't think you're going to get necessarily better results with the Tascam unless you need the ability to not be tethered to your computer. If that's the case, then yeah, a Tascam is a good budget entry, kind of entry-level field recorder. But if you're getting good results and you don't have a need for an actual field recorder, I'd stick with your audio interface in terms of, getting the best in terms of audio quality. Raymond Lowe asks, hi Curtis, B&H is doing a $400 discount on the Tascam DR701D. I watched a video that you said you wouldn't recommend it for the price back then. Do you think it would be worth it for $399 now? Oh, Raymond, I would save up for when the Zoom F4 is on sale because I think it's such a better recorder, so much better than the Tascam DR701D. The only thing that the 701D has on the Zoom F4 is that HDMI triggering capability, but I found it to be a little bit unreliable, so I wouldn't buy the Tascam DR701D for that alone, unless they've made some improvements to it. It just didn't work with very many cameras, and even back then I was shooting a Panasonic GH4. It's a very popular camera back then, and it only worked about 50% of the time, so there were some serious problems with it. So I would probably save up for a Zoom F4, which is going to be about $50 more than that, but it's very much worth that extra $50. Okay. Let's see where we're at here. Fear Sound, great stream, Curtis. Gotta go. Have a good night. Good night. We're going to wrap up here in the next couple minutes. Tick Academy, I want to expose my setup and would like to hear your thoughts. I use Scarlett Solo with condenser mic, ASIO Link Pro and Reaper, and I add isotope denoise to reduce ambient sound and de-reverb to remove. That's a fantastic setup. All great gear. Kevin mentions that the aggregate device was the word I was using or looking for when we were talking about using a MixPre and a Zoom F8 together. In macOS, you can create what's called an aggregate audio device. Thank you for that, Kevin. Tick Academy continues. Echo, to remove echo, He uses the D-reverb in Isotope RX, but it gives me a lot of latency. I do this because I don't have cash to use a RØDECaster or Go XLR. Any advice on what to do? Yeah, I would get hang blankets instead. Don't use D-reverb live. That's just too heavy and it will add too much latency. So I would get rid of the D-reverb. I would get rid of the denoiser, and instead I would hang blankets off camera so that can, manage the reverberation in your room and hopefully some of the noise in your room. Also, turn off anything you don't need that's making noise in as much as possible. And that should help simplify things a little bit. All right. Jonathan Blair, would you recommend Tentacle Sync E or UltraSync 1 or another system? So we're talking about timecode generators here. They both have their advantages. So Tentacle Sync is pretty simple and straightforward. I like that you can rejam all of them to each other wirelessly, so that's great. The app is very simple. I guess the nice thing about Tentacle Sync E is that it comes with an app called Tentacle Sync Studio for Mac. If you're on a Mac, that is the very best app I have seen for syncing timecode audio or timecode encoded video files in the marketplace, bar none. That's the only weakness I really see with the UltraSync 1, is that I don't think it comes with any software unless they've changed that recently, and the software that you could buy that was extra was a little bit more difficult to use and not quite as refined. If you're on Windows, then it's probably going to be a toss-up. It doesn't matter either way. And mainly what I'm talking about, especially if you're going to be recording timecode to a camera that only has a microphone input and no timecode input, dedicated timecode input, then you're going to have to convert that audio recorded timecode in post. And Tentacle Sync does a really, really seamless, quick, nice job of that. So that's my thought on that. The UltraSync ones are amazing. They are constantly rejamming over the air wirelessly. So they stay in sync really, really well. And they have some other kind of unique ones. They have a Bluetooth model. They have what they call a SyncBack Pro for those action cams. So you have a lot of options there. So you're really kind of buying into an ecosystem. And I think Atomos bought them recently, if I'm not mistaken. And they also have a sync module for at least for their Ninja 5. And I assume that they're going to also have that for some of their other recorders as well. So kind of a trade-off there, but there's some thoughts. All right, people. My voice is running out, and I think we need to wrap it up. I just want to say thank you also to Yervant Tech. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. I apologize I can't get to all the questions here. It looks like there's quite a bit more chat. But we will be back. So look for the new video in the next couple of days here on how to work with the compressor in the RØDECaster Pro. Hope this was helpful for you. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to our channel. We'd love to have you along in the future. And we will talk to you guys again soon. Take care, everybody.